Mark, you have honed an ability to play someone who is incredibly boring and annoying. Do you feel like that is going to help your career going forward?
It's interesting. Early on, after season one, I went to Paul Sims and I was like, if all Colin Robinson does is annoy people in the show, then we're going to have a situation where he's actually a really annoying character, because he'll start annoying people at home as well. And so Paul was already one step ahead of me, and he kind of revamped the character a little bit in order to give him a little bit of um, a little pathos behind him, which allowed, I think, people to find him a little more endearing than he initially was.
Well, I think in talking to a lot of your castmates, especially, Kayvan, it's like they sound very different from what they from in the show because these ridiculous accents. But you sound very much the same, but there's a tone of your voice, there's a twinkle in your eye, there's something different, that like it just it helps to really change it. It shows me how impressive the performance is just because, again, your voice sounds very similar, but just the way that your face moves, or in that case, doesn't move, and just like you add so much liveliness to here that you just pull back on in there, which is so fascinating. And by that I mean not fascinating, to watch.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. One of the best compliments I ever got was from Jenny Hutchinson, who wrote on uh, Better Call Saul. And we became friends. And she said at one point to me while we were down there filming, that I am not at all like any of the characters I play. And that was a huge compliment because I play very dumb and usually um, annoying characters. Maybe not so much super, annoying in the sense that I'm like Urkel, but annoying nonetheless, with some social miscues, maybe. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I clearly have each of these characters in me somewhere. Um, I grew up in the Midwest, and there were a lot of people like Colin Robinson or Price from Better Call Saul or Nate from The Office. And I'm sure I've learned to mine that for all it's worth.
What do you like most about Colin?
I like that Colin is confident. He's oddly confident, yet very. Um, I think he's easily emotionally crushed. Um, and so I feel like he's fighting between that confidence and the worry or anxiety over hurt feelings at all times. And, I think a lot of people can relate to that, not in a Colin Robinson exact way, but I think we're always walking that razor's edge between our ego and confidence and just being crushed.
One element of the show I really like is his friendship with Laszlo, which is definitely not a two-way friendship. Not that he, gives all of himself in some ways, because he still has his needs and his hunger and all that. But it's been mostly endearing, sometimes sad to watch that play out over the course of the show.
Yeah, it's definitely a unrequited friendship.
And I do feel there's still interaction with some of the other characters, but I feel like those moments are a little bit more fleeting. Like whenever he's with Nadia, I feel like those are just very, very entertaining. Do you feel like you really mostly spend time with Matt on the show, or do you got to really interact as much with the other characters?
On screen or off?
Well, let's start with on, but I'm off is also interesting. Sure.
Yeah, on screen it was, the majority of the time it was my time was spent with Laszlo and Nandor. Um, and it was great fun. But I wish I had had more time with Nadja, just because Tosh and I have become dear friends, and we're all friends, but Tosh and I really bonded very quickly, season one. And any time that I got to be in a scene with her, we just had such a great time.
I assume they would also appreciate hearing that they are not like their characters, but is there anybody who is maybe a little like their character, not in a bad way?
Um, maybe Matt a little, and that's not throwing shade. I mean, the good parts of Laszlo, the entertaining parts of Laszlo.
There really are so many entertaining, scenarios on this show. Do you have favorites, favorite antics of Collins? I know it's hard, but your top
Yeah.
20 or 30, that should give us some good stuff.
Well, I mean, obviously, when I got to play a child and a teenager, teenage Colin Robinson was one of my favorite things to get to play, just because it was so different than my usual Colin Robinson. Um, and I don't know if it made it into the show or not, but there was one runner that I did starting around season one or two, where whenever we would all be in it's called the fancy room in our vernacular. Whenever we were in the fancy room together and I was reading a newspaper, one of the things that I came up with, which was just so stupid and really a throwaway line, was I would comment on whatever items were on sale at the local grocery store. And, it would just be a stupid line to start the scene off. And for me, it was just a really subtle way of Colin Robinson trying to annoy them because they can't eat anything at a grocery store. So why would they, care in the least? Also, it's kind of a call to Floyd the Barber from the Andy Griffith Show, because he would always be sitting reading a newspaper and then kind of comment off the newspaper. And I always liked how his delivery, it's very subtle.
This show does feel like it's so irreverent and some stuff is just so random. Do you feel like there were rules about, the bounds of these vampires' powers that had to be followed, or they were a little more flexible for storytelling's sake?
The rules were followed pretty closely. Um, and I remember, there would be a script would come out and Jermaine would, say, "Oh, vampires can't do this," or "Vampires can't do that." So that scene had to be rewritten. That became a little more relaxed as the show went on and became its own thing, in which the show was more concerned not with them being vampires, but with them and their interpersonal relationships. Um, and I think at some point the comedy started to trump any rules. So if something was funny, we would go with that and kind of come up with our own rule as we went along. For Colin Robinson, there were no rules. You had never seen an energy vampire before. Um, and so we could come up with our own set of boundaries.
Well, before we started recording, you told me you would give me all the spoilers for season seven, and I have three questions. One, would you come back if there was an opportunity to do so? Two, how likely is that? And three, what would you want to see from Colin Robinson in the next 20 seasons or whatever?
Would I come back? It would depend. It would be weird to come back and not have it be the same group of people, or not have Paul Sims involved. Um, and if, it would have to be at FX or Hulu or something like that, where we would be allowed to put on the show that we were putting on. I think it would be much more likely to have possibly a film in the future. Just logistically speaking, I'm on a new show now, and so contractually, I don't think I could even be able to do it. But a movie would be different. And I think that would be, a really great time. Again, as long as the quality was the same. I mean, I wouldn't want it to be a boring, uh, generic version of what we do in the shadows. I noticed the band Chicago is coming to the Hollywood Bowl pretty soon, and when you think of the band Chicago, you think of like Peter Cetera, and but this rendition is like the bass player and maybe one of the trombonists, and they can call themselves Chicago. That would be, to me, the most embarrassing scenario for the show to come back. Whether I think it's likely a movie, I don't know. I mean, that world is so different than television, and I love television. I don't. Um, Film isn't my, I think 20 years ago, film for an actor would be the ultimate, but now I feel like it's flipped completely. I love living in the world of television. So I'm not really versed in that world per se. So I couldn't really give it a percentage. And what was the third?
What would be the premise? What do you want to see Colin do?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, I always wanted to see Colin in community theater. I thought that would be a funny through line. I also had this idea that um, what was it? That Colin's parents come to visit, and I always thought that would be a fun storyline. And I mean, the politics is a little too obvious, so we kind of shied away from that a little bit. I mean, he does run for city council, but there's a reason behind that.
Well, I feel like there's a world in which, there's a spin-off which is proposed, which is just Colin and it's an energy vampire world or something. And it sounds like something just as risky as, let's say, Breaking Bad without Walter White. But we know that that against all odds, really did work out. So I feel like that the fact that you were on Better Call Saul is not just a little morsel of information. It might be more relevant than you think.
Yeah, I mean, I love working with Vanessa Bayer, and she played my love interest on Shadows. So if they were to come out and ask if, I'd be up for something with Vanessa, I'd always be down.
And you had a chance to see Freaky or Friday yet?
No, but I'm working with Vanessa right now on development, and it sounds, really fun, and she had such a great time. She's truly one of the funniest actors out there working today.
I wish we had a second season of I Love That For You. I was sad that that didn't continue on.
Again, it goes to show that television loves nothing more than to screw themselves over.
Well, in mentioning before break, Better Call Saul and The Office, I mean, with this show, those are three shows that have these like rabid, devoted fan bases, but are all so different. Do you find that, do you have a favorite from among them to interact with? And you feel like there is an overlap? The person's like, yeah, these are the three shows I watch and I love them.
That is interesting. I was talking to my wife the other day about that because someone came up to me, um, someone that would looks like my older brother, who's a little stronger, about 8 years older, has a nice family with kids, and but wears like Oakleys and stuff. And those guys always come up to me about Better Call Saul. And they're always lovely and it's fun talking to them. They always want to talk about the Hummer. Um, and for The Office, it's always younger kids. It's kids in their teens and early 20s that come up to me about The Office. And with Shadows, it's all of them. I mean, it's a wide gamut of people, which I really, what pride I can take, I do for that because it's so rare that you have people in their 60s and people in their teens coming up to you about the same show. And so I'm proud we were able to, hit that wide array of audience. Um, and I think that, it's because it was a funny, smart show. People will come to funny, smart shows if you let the show build an audience. And FX is great at doing that. And we were lucky. I don't think the show would have survived past season one or two in many other places.
Well, since this is a word buzz, I always like to know what the people I'm talking to are watching, what you found very impressive. So, are there other smart, funny shows out there that you really enjoyed lately? Or something dramatic is fine too.
Um, Nothing out of the norm for what people are gushing over. Adolescence is very good. Um, it's funny. I was watching the Little League World Series the other day because Wisconsin was playing, and I'm from Wisconsin, and so I was watching, and these kids would, anytime one of the kids would come up to bat, they would give a little factoid about the kid, and a lot of the factoids were favorite TV shows, and absolutely none of them had a show that was their favorite that's on right now. It was all older shows. I mean, from 10, 20 years ago. And I realized, there are no new shows right now. There are very, very few new comedies right now, very, very few great new dramas right now. We're in this, if peak TV was the Breaking Bad era, we are at the slump bottom TV right now, especially when it comes to comedy. I mean, there's really just very few great new shows out. So all of that to say is my wife and I have been watching The Old Knots Landing and binging that. So we've been enjoying that quite a bit.
Well, I heard you're on a new show. Is that something you can talk about? And is that good or that slump that's not so great either?
No, I got lucky. It's one of the good ones. I'm on The Burbs, which is a revamping of the Tom Hanks movie from the late 80s, early 90s. Um, and it has very, very smart people involved. Fuzzy Door is one of the producers. Imagine is one of the producers, and it's at Peacock. And it stars Keke Palmer, and she's absolutely brilliant. And Jake Whitehall, who's a great British comedian. Julia Duffy, the great Julia Duffy from Newhart. And Paula Pell, who wrote on SNL forever and did Girls Five Ever, and Kapil Talwalkar, who I hadn't worked with before, but is absolutely lovely. And yeah, it's a great hour long comedy horror. And yeah, I got very lucky with that. It was out of the blue. It wasn't on my radar, and it came across my desk, and it was too good to pass up. So, and that'll be coming out in October.
Awesome. Well, it is such a pleasure to hear from you, Mark. Much more enlivening than I might have thought watching Colin Robinson. But the sign of good acting. And I hope that when whatever it is, the Colin spinoff, the movie script, the read whatever, I hope it is up to your standards and that we get to see more of this really classic, iconic character in the future.
Well, I just hope it will be up to the audience's standards.
And if not, we've had a great run and it's fine. We don't have to, we can he can live and the Little League, they can all say, there's the show 20 years ago I watched. What are we doing in the shadows? It was great.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk to me, Abe.